In this video, I'm going to show you how to use Pear Deck to teach this lesson either with students synchronously or asynchronously. The Pear Deck is a great remote learning application that can be used to assess students' learning and measure engagement while they're not in front of you. If you're familiar with Pear Deck, this is going to be a great video just to show you how to adapt the DOE lessons. And if you're not familiar with Pear Deck, this is a great way to just get your feet wet a little bit. So I've already deleted all the teacher facing slides so that this is all student facing, because Pear Deck slides can be student paced, so students can work through them at their own pace, and you don't want to have any teaching facing material in there. Starting with the focus question, originally there is no task for students on these slides. It just gives them sort of what they're going to be thinking about today and the direction about the blue box. Since this is going to be all done in Pear Deck, this doesn't actually apply. So we probably want to delete that. But if we can't delete it, I'm going to actually cover it up. Maybe I'll move that picture over, or maybe I'll make a white square. Either way, you don't want to confuse students by giving them some directions and then not having them follow it later. Also, I like students to engage with the focus question, so I might add a question here. So I'm just going to add the question. I'm going to have them answer the focus question based on their knowledge so far. This is going to give me a little bit of a pre-assessment for the lesson, and I'm going to have them do this in Pear Deck. So in order to do that, you make sure you have the Pear Deck add-on, and then you're going to click your add-ons and open it up, and this toolbar is going to pop up. There are 4 types of student engagement in the free version of Pear Deck. You can have a straightforward text question. You can have a multiple choice question. You can use numbers, which is not something that I've experimented a lot with, but definitely math teachers use it. And then you can also have students look at a website while also staying in the Pear Deck. But I'm going to use a text question here because I want them to answer the question. And I simply click on that, and they are going to be all set. So you'll notice that this sort of footer pops up, and it tells students to write their response. And then a little note pops up telling you that this is a text slide and that this is what it's going to ask students. Make sure not to delete any of this, because if you do, it'll just remove the question. Though if you do want to remove the question intentionally, you can just delete the footer and the comment down here, and it will delete it. Okay. Moving on, the lesson objective, same thing. It generally doesn't have a task for students, but I asked students to write the objective in their own words. I'd probably do kind of one of these and not both, but again, up to you. And this lesson in particular has a lot of instruction and model and not a whole lot of independent work. The students will continue this lesson in day 5, and that's where there'll be a lot of independent work. On this slide, it's a lot of instructions, and I don't have a Pear Deck slide here, but I might ask students if they have any questions about what they're going to be doing or anything like that if I wanted to have them engaged in every slide. On slide 4, they're just going to brainstorm everything they know about the Holocaust. And here, you can use a text slide if you don't have the paid version. They would just list everything they know in a straightforward list, and that would be fine. I have students do that, and a lot of times they prefer it. I do have the paid version, and so I'm able to add a draw slide. You can see it says students draw anywhere on this slide. And in the second video, you're going to see what it looks like for students, but it actually asks them to, they can add text boxes, they can literally draw with their cursor or with their finger or with a pen, depending on their device, so they can actually create a mind map. It's a little bit cumbersome, so students don't love it all that much, but it can be very useful for a lot of different tasks. So all of these questions just ask them to read a passage, or you'll read it, or however you do it in your lesson, and then they answer the question. To be pretty straightforward, these are text responses. So I just have the straightforward write your response Pear Deck question. So it pretty much continues here. You'll notice I did remove the blue box, which belongs down here, because they're not actually writing it in the blue box, and I didn't want to confuse students. And I might also delete the pencil or cover it up if I can't delete it, but only if you want to. And that continues. All of these are student responses. Now on this slide, I felt that it was a lot of text for students and there wasn't a task for them. So I added the instruction for them to highlight the most important details. That's a draw feature. And so students will just use their highlighter tool to highlight um, the most important sentence, and you could change this. You can say the most important word or the most important sentence, or however you want to do it, or something completely different. But that's just a way of making sure students are reading, following along, engaging with the text. I have something very similar on this next slide, where you can continue doing the same thing, have them highlight the most important details, or you can have them use different color highlighters, have them highlight something that they agree with and something they disagree with. There's a lot you can do with the draw feature, but there's also the draggable. So here I clicked on the draggable, and this option allows you to insert a variety of icons. So there's math icons, numbers, uh, fun emojis, different exclamations. I asked them to use the stars to mark the most important details. Similar to the previous question, but kind of a little bit less work for them because dragging the number is less than highlighting. So it depends on what you're trying to get accomplished here, but this is another way just to quickly measure for engagement. Sometimes instead of using 4 stars, I'll put in a question mark and an exclamation point and an X so that there's different things that they could be identifying, questions, connections, and disagreements. Continuing on, the same thing. I just added a text response by clicking that button for this question. That's the end of the model. Once they get into the independent work, the original slide has asked students to write their response in Google Docs, but I didn't want students to go back and forth between different programs. So I just had them write the response right in Pear Deck. It might mean that you get a little bit less proofreading because the Pear Deck isn't the same as Google Docs. It doesn't have the same caliber of writing platform, but it's just a lot easier. So for these 2 questions, I felt like that was fine. I added a text response. For the wrap up, because it's a discussion, I didn't add anything. If you're not doing this synchronously, you might add a text question here. And for the check for understanding, again, a text question. Although a lot of times I use a multiple choice question for my check for understanding, and for my pre-assessment. But up to you.